high dissatisfaction, voices not being heard, that leads to violence. That leads to revolutions, civil wars. Hey folks, welcome back to Bulletin Brass. We're doing another political one, and I think this is actually going to be the trend for a while. There's just too much going on. There's too many topics. So, political. I think we have reached a tipping point in this nation and teetered back the other way. The other day, and it's been a couple weeks now, the California politician Andrew Yang, you may remember him from the recent presidential run, he left the Democratic Party. He basically said what is being done in the name of the party and as part of their agenda does not match what I believe. And he's not saying that his opinions have changed. He's saying that the party has moved away from his position and that he feels that even beyond that, there is a need for a third or more major party that is not the entrenched us or them position. And even more so, he has, because I'm not convinced it's not a publicity stunt in his case, it coincided with a book release, maybe we'll see what happens, But he said some things in addition to all the wishy-washy non-statements. There's been a whole lot of sound bites and Twitter memes and that kind of thing. But in terms of actual holy shit, you said that, he is the first major politician, meaning not some little local mayor or sheriff or national level recognition politician who is relatively mainstream. I mean, Andrew Yang is not a radical in either direction. He's relatively anti-gun, but he doesn't seem to be the knee-jerk reaction anti-gun. And he seems to come by it honestly. So I may disagree with him about it, but at least he's not like a Feinstein or somebody like that who's literally just in it for their power. So he came out and said, if we don't change paths, civil war is inevitable. The path we're on, that is what happens. That is where it goes. And what's interesting is that the timing of that message coincided, not exactly, but in terms of days and weeks, with several other major reputable sources discussing the correlation between dissatisfaction in the nation, and not specifically the US, but in lots of nations. Just general dissatisfaction with serious civil unrest, whether you call it civil war, whether you call it a revolution, so on and so forth, but whatever form it took, open armed conflict as opposed to a terrorist attack or a violent protest or something, but attempts to change the government, attempts to seriously fundamentally change a nation, and whether it's to go back in format or to go, I don't want to use forward because forward implies progress, but to change it from the path it's on. And several different studies were presented that I found that all came to the same general conclusion. They disagreed on details, and they were not studying the exact same thing in the same way, so it wasn't like you would expect them to correlate perfectly. But they all came to the same conclusion. The fact that we're not already in that scenario, that we're not already having an open civil war with actual serious violence, not this war of words that's going on, not a few protests or anything like that, but like open conflict, people shooting people on a regular basis kind of civil war, is remarkable. That it does not correlate with historical facts. That we absolutely should be by any measure. Not that we should be like, why aren't we doing it? We should be doing that. But just that if you looked at the historical numbers and said, well, if a nation gets to the number we're at for dissatisfaction in the ways they were measuring, what will be their status? And we are not like at the borderline. We're well into the stage where historically there has been open conflict. And I think that says a lot for the restraint on both sides, other than the usual extremists, but in general, the tolerance, the patience, the trying to make it work attitude, and the resilience of our system, because we have a system that at least tries to give people a voice, as opposed to many of the nations that were part of that study or time periods that were involved in that study, where the thing that really mattered was that people were dissatisfied and didn't see any way to change it other than violence. They had gotten to the point where there was just nothing left but violence. And that scares the bejesus out of me, because in addition to all that, over the last 2 years, a little more honestly, we have seen that it doesn't matter. Really going back the last 6 years, we have seen that, or at least been given strong indications that our voice is not being heard. That we are basically being told what you will think, how you will feel, what you will do. That the fundamental basis of our nation, where it is the individual first, then city, state, federal, in terms of rights and privileges and priorities, has changed to become federal, state, individual, where federal is they do what the hell they want and we just take it. And then states take whatever they want, did the feds leave them. And then at the bottom of the pyramid is the people of this country, who by our founding documents and history are supposed to be at the top of the pyramid, and what's left is allocated. It's like these are held for the people, and then the states get a few things, and then here's the couple things that the feds get, and the feds aren't allowed to touch the rest, right? And it's been flipped. And that flip has been happening for a very long time. I mean, that's a whole other topic. But we're starting to see cracks in the belief that we have a voice, that our voice actually can cause change. And this is not on one side or the other. Absolutely. We saw violent protests, mostly peaceful protests, last year, and to some extent this year, but mostly last year, from people who felt that their voice was not being heard. Whether you agree with them or not, whether you agree with how they expressed it or not, is irrelevant. If you ask the majority of those people, not the ones just looting stores, but the majority of the people who were there honestly, they feel like they're being victimized by a system and can't see a way to change that, to even express the event. And whether they're right or not is irrelevant in this discussion. Then we have the right, political right, who, I mean, you talk to enough people on the political right, and you're going to find a very large number of them who feel that the election may or may not have been stolen, but it sure as hell was not 100% fair, honest, legitimate. Even if the way it wasn't was social media silencing voices and unequal airtime and so on and so forth. If you leave off any actual like election process fraud, if that's not on the table, if we're not talking about that, just the can my voice be heard when I'm making a political statement on this side through the normal means that are out there? And the answer is no, that you will be shut up, you will be silenced, you'll be deplatformed, you will be attacked. And that's not right either. You're looking at this from both sides, and both sides are saying our voice is not being heard. And when you go back to what we were talking about, high dissatisfaction, voices not being heard, that leads to violence. That leads to revolutions, civil wars, whatever the formula is in that particular country. And that's a very scary thing. And to me, it was also very scary that a mainstream politician was comfortable enough with that idea to say it on a national platform. I mean, he's saying this at the same time he is announcing a new political party. He didn't just say we should do it. He actually created a new political party. I mean, you can look it up, Forward Party. And I mean, it's a real thing. Whether it's a publicity stunt for him or not, I don't know. But like, it's an honest to God thing. Wow, hummingbird. Or is that a butterfly? It's moving too quickly. That was a butterfly, very fast butterfly. It is something we have never seen in this nation. That I'm aware of. Feel free to put in the comments below if you know of another time where a mainstream politician has openly said we are headed to civil war. But it is interesting because a lot of people on the fringes of left and right have been saying this for years, and it slowly crept inward to, not quite far fringes are saying, hey, this isn't looking good. Like this, what's happening does not lead to good things, right? And people preach patience, tolerance, work the system, don't just lash out, because once you start that process, it can spiral very quickly. I mean, if you look at how this goes, it isn't like you go, step one, politician says something you don't like, step two, open civil war. It's step one, step two, step three, step four, step five, step six, and at some point it starts becoming, violence starts becoming more common and acceptable, and then starts spiraling where you have action, reprisal on reprisal, and then suddenly you've got Hatfields and McCoys. And since in the current political climate, it's not as simple as, North versus South or anything silly like that. And I mean silly in the current context. I mean, what is civil war even going to look like if you start pursuing that idea? Horrific is the answer. So I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just thought that was worth bringing up. The next video is going to be on the supply chain situation that our government is still not denying anymore. They finally had to admit it is existing, but is passing off as something very different. So we will get into that next. Take care, have fun, keep safe, folks, and keep shooting and do a little preparing. whether it's a storm, whether it's a supply chain issue, or whether it's riots in the streets. Be a little preparing helps. Anyway, ciao guys.